Welcome inside this edition of Big Ten Today. I'm your host, Rick Pizzo. Excited to get you to Iowa City. Shortly, our training camp crew had a chance to watch Hawkeyes practice in person. They'll have a complete report on Kirk Ferentz and his guys coming up in just a little bit. But we begin with the big story in Monday's release of the preseason AP Top 25 college football poll, which saw Penn State ahead of Ohio State. Those teams ranked second and third, respectively. Oregon also inside the top 10. Illinois, Michigan, and Indiana giving the Big Ten 6 teams inside the preseason top 20. And for much more on those among the ranked and those hoping to be there at the end of the year, welcome in Chris Vanini to touch on all things Big Ten related. So, Chris, when the coaches poll was released, we saw Ohio State ahead of Penn State, but the AP poll had the Nittany Lions just ahead of the Buckeyes. Who's your Big Ten favorite and why?
My Big Ten favorite is Penn State. I think I'm going to have them number 1 in the country on my ballot, actually, just because of the amount of experience they have coming back. Drew Aller should be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. They've added Trevor Pena, some good wide receivers there. Obviously, 2 of the best running backs in the country. They've got all the pieces. They've got a schedule that's pretty good, too. You've got Oregon at home. You've got Ohio State coming off of a bye. And I know the whole thing with Penn State is, like, can they get over the hump? If not now, then when, really? It does feel like Penn State might be the Michigan and Ohio State of the last couple of years, guys who turned down the NFL to come back and try to win it all, and I think there's a good shot that they do.
What about Ohio State? How differently do you view this team in comparison to the national championship team of a year ago?
Well, obviously, last year's team had a record number of NFL draft picks, but I think it starts with, is this quarterback competition real, or is Julian saying the guy? It feels like it's real, at least to this point, and I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or not. Like they say, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any quarterbacks, but it all starts there because this is a team with probably the best wide receiver group in the country. Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith. You added Max Clare, the tight end from Purdue. They just need somebody who's going to get the ball to these guys. That's the question. You also have the 2 new coordinators on both sides of the ball. But Ohio State, they never have a down year. They'll be in the mix once again.
Of course, they won it all nationally, but it was Oregon who won the Big Ten championship in its first year. The Ducks lost a ton of names, not just to graduation, but Evan Stewart as well to injury. How does the Ducks' number 7 preseason AP ranking compare to your expectations?
I think it's a little bit low. I think I might have them a little bit higher. I mean, it's rare to have a guy who kind of sits and waits in the wings in Dante Moore, who has a year of starting experience back at UCLA. The Oregon people I talked to are really high on him. And I'm really high on Mekhi Hughes, the running back, who came from Tulane, had almost 2,800 yards the last couple of years. I think this is a team that's going to run the ball very well. And defensively had to replace a couple of guys on the line, but the linebackers are good. So, you know, like Oregon, like they're always in the mix. Dan Lanning, I think he's lost 6 games. I think 4 of them are to teams who played for the national championship. So, like, he is always getting that team right to the top level, and I think they'll be there once again.
I'm excited. I get to head to Champaign shortly to watch Illinois' preseason camp on Wednesday. They're ranked number 12, coming off an historic season under Brett Bielema, and so many key players from that team are back in 2025. What's your take on the Illini as a legitimate playoff squad?
Well, the schedule's a bit tougher. That's the first part. And I think with a lot of these teams and a lot of these big conferences is what's the schedule break that you get. Indiana turned out to have an easier schedule than maybe we thought at the beginning of the year. But Illinois has got everything back. That experience is very important, especially on the lines in today's game of college football. Luke Altmaier took a big step last year. And Illinois, you know, they won 10 games last year, but it's not like they put up huge numbers in anything. They were like 60th in offense and defense, so I think there's still a lot of room for them to improve. But as we see year to year, close games can go one way or another. We remember the Rutgers game last year, and all it takes is a couple bounces the right way, the wrong way to turn a okay season into a great season, or the other way around. But a lot of pressure on Illinois this year for the first time in quite a while.
I found Michigan's ranking at number 14 to be really intriguing because they had a disappointing season. I know a great finish by beating Ohio State and Alabama in their last 2 games a year ago, but you also have a freshman quarterback. He's highly touted, but he's never taken a snap in college. What's the realistic outlook for the Wolverines?
Yeah, I mean, you look at last year, they were like the worst passing offense in the country, like bottom 5 nationally, and they still beat Ohio State and Alabama. So it's like, all right, if you can just get something competent in the passing game, you've got a really good team here. I think they're going to run the ball very well. I like the pieces that they have there and on the offensive line. Does Bryce Underwood, the quarterback, the 5-star, win the job, or do they start with Mikey Keene, the veteran, especially when you're going to Oklahoma in week 2? Defensively, they're loaded again. This team is, we saw it in the bowl game, even though they had a lot of guys sit out, they've got future NFL guys stacked on this defense once again. It just comes down to, can you get something going in the passing game? Not only at quarterback, but the wide receiver position has been pretty thin as well last year, maybe coming into this year. So we still have to see, do they have those playmakers on the outside?
I'm glad you brought up Mikey Keene. Everybody's anointing Bryce Underwood. Keene has started a ton of games with a lot of success. He could be the guy to start the year. Now, there's a quarterback question in Bloomington. Curtis Work is gone. We know it's going to be Fernando Mendoza, but most folks in the Big Ten haven't seen him. We did see Indiana write one of the best stories in all of college football last year. You mentioned the schedule. It's much more difficult in 2025. How likely, in your opinion, is it that Indiana can run it back?
Well, it was the greatest season in school history, so I think running it back is going to be pretty tough. But if NFL people are really high on Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback who came in from Cal. And so people have pretty high hopes on him, potentially one of the top quarterbacks taken next year if he lives up to that. They've got a good number of receivers back. They've got a good number of defensive guys back. I think there's some questions on the line. They had to replace a lot of guys on that defense in some other spots. But you know, Curt Cignetti, he has literally won everywhere he's been. He likes to talk about it, but it's true. And so, like, you can't doubt him that they're going to fall off in any big way. You know, it's a team that could be a very good team, but, you know, win 3 or 4 fewer games than last year. And that's not necessarily a big step back. It's just the nature of the year-to-year schedule and what your team is. You know, if you told Indiana, you know, you're going to win 7 games in the season, that's a big deal for that program, even if it's coming off 11 wins. So the standard has been raised, and I don't see them falling back too far, but you know, I don't think they'll be 11-1 again.
Nebraska not in the top 25, but they are receiving votes. And a lot of folks that I've talked to that cover college football see the Huskers as a big-time sleeper pick heading into 2025. Where do you see them stacking up in the big picture?
Well, it helps that they avoid Ohio State and Oregon. That's certainly nice to see on the schedule. They also don't have a true road game, I think, until like mid-October. So there's a lot of time for this team to kind of gel and figure things out. And Dylan Raiola, the second year as a starter, now he knows kind of how to handle everything, what to do. I think he'll be better. You know, you lose the defensive coordinator, Tony White, who's a really good coach. But I think Nebraska, you've gotten over that hump of getting to a bowl game now. It's not like you have all this pressure of how bad the past couple of years have been. I think people now are just expecting incremental progress, and I think you can see that this year with the way the team and the schedule sets up.
Finally, we saw some improvement in offense from Iowa a year ago. Obviously, it couldn't get much worse than it was the year prior. What makes the difference between what we would consider a mid-year for Iowa, one of those mid-tier bowl games, and another one of Kirk Ferentz's 10-win seasons?
I need to see how they can run the ball. Like Mark Gronowski, the quarterback from South Dakota State, is getting a lot of hype, a lot of attention, even though he's coming off of an injury. I think people have high hopes for him. The defense, you know, is always going to be solid. But I think Caleb Johnson might have been the most underrated player in the country last year, the running back for Iowa, just because you had people like Ashton Jeanty, Cam Scadaboo getting all the attention. He carried that offense last year, and he is gone. And it's going to be kind of a group of guys, I think, who are going to fill the role there for running the ball. So, you know, with Iowa, like, you know, the quarterback, Mark Gronowski, he can run. I'm very curious how he fits into what the offense coordinator, Tim Lester, is going to run. But I need to make sure Iowa can really run the ball first before I think they can get up into that, you know, 9-10 win type of season. When they have those big breakthrough years, it's usually because they can run the ball pretty well.
Great insight from Chris Vannini. No one does it better. Chris, we appreciate the time. Season almost officially here.
Thanks for having me.
Kirk Ferentz will begin his 27th season as the head Hawkeye, just 2 wins away from passing Woody Hayes to become the winningest coach in Big Ten history. As expected, Ferentz would rather focus on the football itself, which is exactly what our training camp crew did when it had the chance to visit Hawkeye practice.
Rick, thanks. Greetings from Iowa City. Just watch the Hawkeyes go through their paces as they get set for year 27 under Kirk Ferentz. It is a much-anticipated season. Dave Revson alongside Jake Butt and Yogi Roth. And, guys, one of the reasons it's so highly anticipated is the quarterback transfer. Mark Gronowski coming in from South Dakota State. He's a two-time national champ at the FCS level. He has played in 55 games as a quarterback. The Jackrabbits won 49 of them. It's not all Gronowski. They had a lot of talent around them, but this is a guy who's played a lot of football and who has won, and so I want to start there. What did you think of the quarterback play?
Well, there's a lot to break down there, as we all know. Let's just start with he's got command. Right? Based on that experience you referenced, I think he's got what I'll coin the it factor, which means when you walk into a room, people feel your presence, and you make them better. I mean, how many times on practice field today was he coaching up the wide receivers, getting the protection set, killing one protection to go to the other? I mean, true mastery of this system early on. He didn't practice in the spring. He was on the field. It was all mental reps. So I think immediately, this offense takes a massive leap. Then you look at the skill set. Okay, he can play from the pocket. Clearly, he can play when the pocket breaks down. And then when he's got to scramble, I think that's where he's going to be most dangerous. I mean, this team has struggled with explosive plays. The last 3 years, last, and 13th in the Big Ten in explosive plays. When you scramble, that's what happens. I don't think they're going to have 11, 12, 13-play drives to find success on offense, and that has kind of been their story. At least it was last year. So a lot of excitement. I think it's worthy.
Yeah, and that experience is a huge plus here because Tim Lester running the West Coast system, it's a lot of verbiage. They use motion, they use shifts, and if you master that offense as a quarterback, they do that to reveal certain things from the defense. And once that's revealed, you can then exploit those weaknesses. I think what you said there, his rushing ability is the major key because you look back at the Iowa quarterbacks, they haven't had someone that's even really mobile enough to get outside of the pocket, let alone be extremely dangerous outside of the pocket. And I think in the run game, too, is this offensive line is one of the better offensive line units in the conference, in the country. Jennings-Dunker, I think, is the most impressive offensive line I've seen since we started the camp tour. But it's a numbers game. If your quarterback can run, you can leave that defensive end unblocked because you can read him and make that defense pay. All of a sudden, those 5 linemen get an additional body in the run game to help unlock this multiplicity of running backs in the backfield. So a lot of reasons to be excited.
So you get QB run. What about running back run? I mean, that was the offense last year. Caleb Johnson was a revelation. We're talking to Kirk Ferentz, and he reminded us, hey, he was not our starting running back when you guys were here at camp last year. And at the end of the year, the guy is one of the top running backs in the country and going over 1,500 yards and having a historic season. And really, I mean, because the pass game struggled last year and wasn't where they needed it to be, Caleb Johnson was a huge part of the reason they were still able to have a really successful season. He has moved on. What do we think of that group? And again, we should say Kamari Moulton was held out of practice. They expect him to be fine. But again, we didn't get to see the guy who figures to be running back one.
Well, so much, and we've heard it today, talking to the quarterback, talking to Tim Lester, the offensive coordinator. This is the Shanahan system, right? Whether it's Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan. The biggest part of that was how they ran the ball. Outside zone scheme. You can go back to Terrell Davis with the Super Bowl champion Denver Broncos all the way to now the 49ers. It kind of doesn't matter at times at running back because of the way this offensive system is intact. My favorite drill today, it might have been yours as well, was the offensive line against 2 defensive linemen, 2 O linemen, 2 D linemen, and they're just on tracks. And they're just running. I mean, like, just run right, run left, and that is the zone scheme to make it super simple. And the defensive line, those linemen, they're doing everything they can to get over that block. The offense doing a great job of staying on that track. And that is Iowa football. Turn on the tape. That's what they do, and they do it as well as anybody in America. So to hear them talk about that system again, now you add in what you referenced, the play action off of that, the mirroring of that play action. I think the whole running back group, we saw a couple freshmen, redshirt freshmen play well today. They're going to bring back, they're going to get healthy as the season progresses. I don't think they miss a beat. Maybe not as elite as Caleb Johnson, but if they go by committee, I think they'll have fresh legs throughout the majority of the season.
Yeah, in my opinion, there's not too many things more beautiful than watching Iowa offensive line at its best. That drill you're referencing, it absolutely stood out to me. That outside zone scheme, it's like watching a coordinated symphony. They all step in unison. There's 5 guys out in the tight end, 6, 7 guys on one singular string, and they're working as one singular unit. And what that allowed today is, okay, I saw a number of freshman running backs get in there, and if you just trust your tracks, if you just trust what you're coached to do, these double teams are going to create holes and create space and create movement. And that's, again, not just the foundation of the offense, but the entire team. My senior year, we were the number 2 team in the country. We came into Kinnick Stadium, and it was the most frustrating game as an opponent because the offensive line dictated the terms of the game. They were able to slow the game down, control the clock. All of a sudden, Phil Parker's defense is on the field. They force you to go 3 and out. That's the engine of this team, and this is the best offensive line we've seen in a number of years at Iowa.
I want to focus in on the defense, and I do think there is this tendency, and I'm as guilty of it as anyone, to just kind of almost dismissively say, well, they'll be great. And it diminishes the amount of work that goes into getting great. But I mean, the numbers speak for themselves, guys. 9 straight years allowing 20 points or fewer. There's no one else in the country that has a streak longer than 4. So they're more than double any other team. Phil Parker just has the formula here. He's so good. They know what kind of players they need. They develop them. This is a year with a lot of turnover. I mean, depending on kind of how you count it, 4 returning starters on defense. Is this unit going to live up to that history? Are we going to be able to say they'll just figure it out because they always do?
I believe they will. And when you watch Iowa's defense, it's been a few years for me just watching them like, man, what makes this group special? Like, they don't have a top 5 pick in the defensive line. They're not running a bunch of exotic pressures or a ton of crazy coverages. But what they do is the sum is greater than the parts. All 11 guys are on a string, and they work together. And what that means is there's no vulnerabilities or weak spots in the defense. So there's new faces starting, but you look at them, these are 4th, 5th, 6th-year guys that have mastered Phil Parker's language and system. Again, they should be able to play without any weak points. I think the one key area here is they gave up too many explosive plays in the back end, and then can they force more turnovers? All of a sudden, you'll be looking at a top 10 defense, if not better.
And I think we should give this defense, the personnel, the opportunity to potentially become draft picks. If you start at Iowa on defense over the last 25 years, over 80% of the starters have been drafted. Now, they might be 5th, 6th rounders, but you know they're going to be so sound, to your point. And watching practice, I mean, you guys have been to a ton of stops. I've been to a handful. The technician element of this practice, individual drill, was so impressive, which is why you see patience at corner. It's why you see great leverage coming off the edge. I think this defensive group is going to come out cooking this season because I think they know their fits, and to your point, have mastered on Phil Parker's scheme.
And I know you're not trying to say this, but I mean, there are some really good athletes, some really good-looking guys. But I'm like, Xavier Wampa looks like an NFL player.
Right. Yeah. No, and Aaron Graves is one of the more disruptive defensive linemen. I'm saying, like, you're not looking at it's not a #1 pick, right?
Totally.
These
totally
guys are just real, the sum is greater than the parts. So yes, yeah.
So what does it come down to for this team? I mean, I think one thing that's really interesting is you're playing 3 of the 4 college football playoff teams for the Big Ten from a year ago. You get all 3 of those games at home. So on one hand, that's a really challenging schedule, and honestly, they got some tough road games as well. But your biggest games are here at Kinnick, and as you talked about, Jake, that is no easy place to play.
This team's constructed in a way, with everything we just said, to dictate the terms of play, and it starts with the offensive line. Can they control the clock? Can they extend drives? Can they have 5, 6, 7-minute drives, wear out their opponents? Can the defense be what they were, if not take a step further this year? Forcing turnovers is a big part of the upset. And then could Mark Gronowski be who we think he can be? And I don't think he needs to be a Heisman candidate, but can he make some plays on 3rd down when the receivers aren't open? Can he lead this offense into a top 50, top 40 total grade at the end of the season? If that's the case, I wouldn't be shocked to see Iowa in that playoff conversation.
Yeah, the floor is an 8-win team, right? I mean, that's kind of what Iowa always is. They're going to be tough defensively, they're going to run the football, and now you think they got an answer. Receiver upgrade, they're playing better. We're talking to Tim Lester, just watching them compete. Mark Gronowski, upgrade there at quarterback. So can he complete the 3 throws necessary in the second half? And then ultimately, to me, it's explosive plays. They're going to be limited in penalties. They're going to win the turnover differential. All things they've done in the entirety of Kirk Ferentz's career once he got this thing rolling. To me, it's the explosive plays. You got to have that in this league. You can churn out 10, 11 play drives, but if you can just get a couple easy ones, oh my gosh, does it make things so much easier? And because of his ability to run, and when plays break down, his ability to keep his eyes up and find some of those receivers in the back end, they got a shot to do some damage.
To your point, Yogi, 9 straight full seasons. They've won at least 8 games. You know that's where they're going to be. And so then the question is, if you want to be a college football playoff team, people are talking about this as a potential dark horse. Are there a couple more wins there on the margins? Can you get yourself to 10 and be in that discussion? Because they would be, certainly with this schedule, where they get to 10, they would absolutely be in the discussion for the CFP.
Your preseason college soccer coaches polls have been released. 2 Big Ten men's teams among the top 25. Ohio State is 3rd, Indiana at number 11. The league dominating the women's poll, 8 teams find themselves ranked, led by USC and UCLA, each inside the top 10. As Chris Vanini noted earlier in the show, quarterback competition in Columbus seems real, with Julian Sain and Lincoln Kienholz battling to be the guy under center when OSU kicks off its season at home against #1 Texas. Regardless of who takes the first snap, there's no doubt this type of game can set the tone for the entire season.
The first game is a monster right out of the gate. And, I'll just say this, we're excited about playing in that game. I know Buckeye Nation is fired up. It is going to be an unbelievable atmosphere. And I'm not going to get into it now because we're just under 3 weeks away, but we need the shoe rocking, just like it was for the Indiana game, just the way it was for the Penn State game, a couple years ago. They can't get away with the clap. I mean, we got to bring it to put them on silent cadence. It's got to be the loudest it's ever been, and what an unbelievable atmosphere it's going to be. And so, we remind our players that this game is here. You can't all of a sudden just get fired up the week of the game. We're playing that game right now, every single moment. And so, even while I'm here, I got to get back and watch film because we got work to do.
What an absolutely unbelievable week 1 of college football. You have 3 matchups featuring top 10 teams, including, of course, #1 Texas taking on Ohio State inside the shoe. So much to look forward to as we say goodbye on this edition of Big Ten Today.